Hey everyone, John here, and I want to touch on something that I find rather interesting, and I noticed this just after recording the previous update, but the Switch's software sales have now exceeded 3DS's, and that's despite 3DS selling around 14 million more hardware units, and also being on the market for much longer. Math is hard, this many years. That's a long time more. So this number here is insane, and if you go into the actual software chart, you'll notice that all these Switch titles are selling considerably more than 3DS. So let's just go over here. They're 26 million for Mario Kart, 18 million for Mario Kart 7, 16 million for Pokemon, whereas Pokemon Sword and Shield was on 18 million. Mario 3D Land, 12 million, whereas Odyssey was around 18 million. So even Smash, around nearly 20 million on Switch, around 9.5 million on 3DS. So right now, the Switch is just exceeding everything the 3DS threw at it. But I want to go a bit further, and this is primarily inspired by Shane Gill, who's the creator of Digino Gaming, and what he basically did was compared the Switch's software sales right now to the highest performing console of all time, being the PlayStation 2. And we'll get a bit more in depth with our own comparisons in a moment, but let's just use Shane Gill's for the moment. So here is the Switch's software sales. These are all sourced from Nintendo, even though this comes from Wikipedia, but the sources are Nintendo. And if we go on to the PS2, bam! The highest selling PlayStation 2 game was Grand Theft Auto San Andreas at 17.33 million. Look at that! Like, it takes a long time for any Switch title to even get lower than that. So we go from Mario Odyssey at 18, which is higher than San Andreas, all the way down to Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu at 12 million. But even that 12 million for Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu is very high. That's more than the third best-selling PS2 game. For PS2, 5.9 million would get you onto the top 10, whereas that would not be the case on Switch. I think the next best-selling title on Switch is Luigi's Mansion 3, at around, I believe, 6 or high 5. But yeah, to even get that on the chart compared to what PS2 has here is insane. And PS2 sold 3 times the amount Switch has. So that really does put it in perspective. Now I want to dive in a bit further to other consoles as well. But before we do this, I do want to say that this is not for fueling any console wars. This is just, I just find it fascinating. I find it fascinating to see how well the Switch is doing software-wise. This isn't to put down any other consoles, you know, just for the figure's sake. It's just interesting. But anyway, let's find our own comparisons. Let's first get a better look at Switch versus 3DS, and as you can see here side by side, the 3DS was definitely not a poorly performing system, but the Switch is just dwarfing every single franchise. Whether it's 3D Mario, or Pokemon, or Zelda, or Animal Crossing, or Smash, they all perform better on Switch. Although the patterns are rather similar, you'll notice that the key franchises are in similar places, they move around a little bit, but not too much. Tomodachi Life is an interesting one on 3DS. That just about scrapes by as the 10th best-selling game on the system, but again, that's 6.59 million, whereas New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, the 10th best-selling Switch game, is 7.44 million, so Tomodachi Life would not have charted on Switch. But let's stick to Nintendo systems. How about the poor old Wii U? Gosh, so Mario Kart 8 Deluxe sold 26.74 million units on Switch, and while the Wii U version is still insane for the platform, 8.45 million does not even come close to what Switch did. It just goes to show how big of a new audience all these ports are reaching. But the saddest thing is the remaining 9 games would not have charted on Switch because they all sold less than New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe. Even New Super Mario Bros. U, which was bundled with some systems and also had the New Super Luigi U bundle, is 5.8 million. I do think a lot of these numbers are very good when taken in the context of it being Wii U, but yeah, compared to Switch, these ain't so good. How about the Wii though? This monster has some of the best-selling games of all time, but I do think there's an asterisk to be had there. Wii Sports, 82.9 million, that's very impressive. However, in pretty much every country outside of Japan, it was bundled with the system, so this pretty much reflects the console sales. Although I guess you can argue that Wii Sports was pushing a lot of people to buy the system in the first place, so I think it does earn that number in some respects, but the other ones are a bit more interesting to discuss. Now, these are also extremely impressive. There's basically no other systems that have multiple 30 million seller games that weren't exclusively in bundles. So Mario Kart Wii, Wii Sports Resort, and New Super Mario Bros. Wii are all at 30 million. No Switch game has done that yet, although Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and Animal Crossing have a chance. We also have Wii Play at 28.02 million units, and again, this one came with a Wii Remote, so those numbers are a bit inflated. But still, those are its numbers, and that's crazy. And Wii Fit is where the Switch starts to fight back a little bit, 22.67 million units. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has it beat, and Animal Crossing New Horizons is very likely outsold it by now, given that the Switch data comes from way back in June. However, Wii Fit Plus is kinda one in the same, and it recaptured the same magic again at 21.13 million units. It's hard to deny the Wii had a bunch of juggernauts, although what's interesting is a lot of this is dominated by Wii-branded franchises, with the exception of Mario Kart Wii and New Super Mario Bros. Wii. So there's two remaining traditional Nintendo games being Smash Bros. Brawl and Mario Galaxy, and on Switch, the respective iterations have them beat. This also goes for Zelda titles, which don't chart in the Wii's top 10, but the 12th best-selling Wii title is Twilight Princess at 7.53 million units, whereas Breath of the Wild is 18.6 million units, double Twilight Princess, and if you include the Wii U sales of that game, then Breath of the Wild is above 20 million copies sold. And yeah, you can also include the GameCube sales of Twilight Princess, but again, it doesn't come close. Skyward Sword was considerably less at 3.52 million units, although that does require Motion Plus, I'm sure that impacted it somewhat. But to just compare again, the 13th best-selling Switch game is Link's Awakening at 4.38 million units. So Link's Awakening beat Skyward Sword, and Breath of the Wild beat Twilight Princess by a lot. There's also Animal Crossing City Folk, which we called Let's Go to the City here in Europe, which sold 3.38 million units, and again, Animal Crossing on Switch, so much more than that. It's really not comparable. But one last comparison for the Wii, there's Mario Party 8 at 8.85 million units, and Super Mario Party on Switch at 10.94, so Mario Party is far more healthy, and that's even better than Wii Party, which was 9.34 million. So while the Wii was huge and you can't really take anything away from that, most of Nintendo's properties are far healthier on the Switch. And also keep in mind the Switch is 3 years old, whereas the Wii had its entire lifespan to get these numbers. There's a slim chance that Mario Kart 8 Deluxe could actually beat Mario Kart Wii in the long run. I'm not sure it will, but this thing just will not slow down. So we have official numbers for one final Nintendo system being the DS, and while the DS was very big and very successful, the software numbers aren't quite as crazy as the Wii. Although overall software is very comparable, so I guess the DS just had more games that sold really well, rather than just a few games selling incredibly well. But New Super Mario Bros. Is the best-selling game at 30.8 million units, but after that, these games would have charted on the Switch. Nintendo's 23.96 million units, which Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is beating, and Mario Kart DS 23.6 million, again, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has it beat. Animal Crossing New Horizons and Smash are beating Brain Age, and Pokemon Sword and Shield is selling better than Diamond and Pearl and Black and White. In fact, Sword and Shield is the third best-selling Pokemon game of all time, with second being Gold and Silver and first being Red and Blue. The DS was a really varied platform, and a lot of third parties performed very well on that too, whereas this just portrays the first-party games. But again, New Horizons is doubling Wild World, and keep into account New Horizons came out this year. This is Wild World's lifetime sales. Mario 64 DS 11.06 million units, whereas Odyssey 18.06 million units. So that's Switch compared to Wii U, 3DS, Wii, DS, and PS2. But let's get a bit more modern. How is Switch software comparing to PlayStation 4? Now before we go through this, it is worth noting Nintendo updates their software every quarter, whereas Sony don't. So a lot of these numbers may be a bit outdated. In fact, these sources tell us exactly where they're from. So GTA 5 is from this year, that's pretty recent. Uncharted 4 though, is from October 2019. So Uncharted 4 is around 6 months outdated. Where are we in the year? God, we're in August, so this is around 10 months outdated. Again, Spider-Man around the same from the end of 2019. Witcher 3, 2020, so these all vary a little bit. I'd imagine some games, such as Monster Hunter World, would have sold a lot more since then, because Capcom have announced that it's sold 15 million units across all platforms, whereas as of July 2019, it sold 4.67 million units. However, 6 months prior to that, it sold 4 million on PS4. So in around 6 months, that's around 600,000 copies, so in a year's time, I would wager that the PlayStation 4 version is around the 5 million mark, maybe 6 million. So while these are a bit outdated, I wouldn't say they're crazy outdated, which is the main thing. And a lot of these have been out a lot longer than the Switch. Like for instance, Uncharted 4 came out in 2016. The Switch wasn't even a thing then, and that's the PlayStation 4's second best-selling game. I think GTA 5 is very comparable to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe has surprisingly sold more than the PlayStation 4 version of GTA 5, but they're very similar games in their positioning. They're basically both last-gen games that keep selling, and because they keep selling, there's no need to make any sequels to these games. But after GTA 5, we have to go down a while to find something that's really comparable to the Switch chart. Again, the second best-selling game on PS4 is Uncharted 4, and that's at 16 million units. Whereas to get into that ballpark on Switch, we have to go around halfway down the list. So Switch software definitely has a much higher ceiling than most PlayStation 4 games. However, there's a healthy amount of 10 millions on PS4. The Witcher 3, God of War, The Last of Us Remastered, and Horizon Zero Dawn are all 10 million. Spider-Man is 13 million, and the closest comparison on Switch is I guess Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and Let's Go Pikachu, but Spider-Man is around a million more, and probably a bit more than that since the update of these sales. Now, the most recent addition to this list is The Last of Us Part 2, which sold 4 million units as of June 26th, so pretty soon after its launch, probably a lot higher than that now. Whereas the 10th best-selling Switch game is New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe at 7.44 million units. I would wager The Last of Us Part 2 has probably beaten Mario by now, but yeah, that's PlayStation 4 sales versus Switch. Nintendo only records first-party sales, but we do know that third parties are a lot healthier on PS4 than they are on Switch, although most of PS4's top 10 is still first-party. Now, I am not confident in comparing Xbox One because a lot of these figures don't have that accurate of sources, because Microsoft don't typically share their sales data very often. And also, Game Pass is a very real consideration on Xbox. Most people aren't buying the big first-party games anymore because they get them in the subscription. So I'll put these here just for comparison's sake, but I wouldn't look too far into these numbers. So those are the comparisons we're doing today. Hopefully that puts into perspective how well the Switch is doing, and hopefully you found this interesting. It's a very healthy era for Nintendo, and all platforms. So let us know what you guys think about this down below, and of course be sure to subscribe to Game Explain for a lot more on Switch sales and other things gaming too. Until next time, bye!